Okay, well, thanks for joining us today. Exciting episode.
Yeah. I've just realised we put out a survey on Instagram saying what would you like to see, or hear us cover in the next episodes. And I put on there creative process, mental health, or business and money. Pretty much no one said business and money, but that's what this episode is about.
Listening to our
So we're
audience.
going against what you want. So maybe no one is listening, but that's fine.
Yeah, I mean it's about process. Well, we will be respond. We have responded to
The
that.
thing
We will
is, I
be.
think like money links into mental health, doesn't it? Because it's the whole confidence and validation thing, which is what we're sort of here to talk about today.
Yeah, we're talking about metaphysics as far as I'm concerned, because we're kind of talking about the way that we perceive reality, right? It's like we're talking about what we understand as having value in our world, and it's like
Mm.
that is symbolically represented by, in some ways, by the way that we spend our money and the way that we use money to be able to grow different parts of ourselves, like
Mm.
in our external environment. So
Yeah, and like the energy of money as well. I feel like in society now there's a bit of an anti-money movement, and if you're seen as wanting to be rich or you know wanting to live a life of luxury, then that's an evil thing. There's a lot of obviously anti-rich sentiment in our society today, which I get on one level because it's the disparity in society. It's the fact that there's so few people who are in the wealthier bracket. Well, there's so many people living in poverty. But I think, rich people are kind of the scapegoat for that. And yeah, I mean, in the past, I've definitely had a kind of fractured relationship with money and feeling guilty for wanting money. And that's something that I've definitely worked on a lot over the last few years.
yeah, I think this is a big area to be touching on. Essentially, I can relate though to that journey of becoming more open to receiving it, and it's not just money as well, because I think it's actually, there's an energy of being able to receive, and right, and it's like that could be money, it could be love, it could be opportunities, it could be knowledge, it could be creativity. I do think that, like, we draw things to us by being open and being receptive to receiving things. um, and yeah, I'm very grateful to be in a place where I am more loving of myself, to be able to tune into those frequencies and to be able to invite more abundance. And that, can be in the form of money, or that can be in the form of other people, receiving
Opportunities.
opportunities and positive energy. Um, so, and of course, art and that sector of society has been so beaten down, and I wonder sometimes that maybe the saboteurs of society have want to beat artists down and want to beat the artistic sector down, because there's a certain form of resentment, perhaps,
Definitely.
that comes with, like, people pursuing their dreams and being able to pursue their dreams, when the majority of people are doing things that are against their nature. That they're not their dharma. That they've been put here on this planet to do something, and they've because, and it's hard because they've been conditioned and they've been shamed by their family, and they've been told that a good life means that you have to give up what you stand for. So it's like there's a lot of, like, conflicting beliefs going around, and it's very, very easy to get pulled into that. And I don't blame anyone for it. And I understand the dynamics and how they have been formed and structured. Um, uh, I think that at the result though is that we are not valuing the artistic part of our culture in the way that it needs to grow in the right way, because the artistic part of our society directly influences everything else. It influences business, it influences the way that we see reality, the way that we engage with other people. Like, it's fundamental to all forms of education, self-realization, science, developing new ways to help our environment, and to be able to connect with Mother Nature, to be able to connect with ourselves, to be able to be harmonious. I really see the survival of human beings based on this. I mean, that's the type of value that I can see and understand from artistic work and process.
Mm. It does feel like art and its value has really, it's quite underplayed generally. And I feel like, I'm probably going to sound like an old lady when I say this, but the internet has really contributed to the undervaluing of art, because it's so easy to access things now, music, books, TV, film. You can get all of that stuff without leaving your house, and so perhaps with that absence of having to buy physical media in order to enjoy art, I think the removal of that stage has really led to us taking art for granted. And I'm guilty of this as well, consuming things for free. You can just go on YouTube and find music that you want for free, or videos or whatever, streaming movies for free, or for a very small amount of money, going on Spotify and finding music for free. So yeah, although the internet has obviously helps artists in a lot of ways as well by like getting your work out there, the flip side of that is this just general attitude of undervaluing and not appreciating art for what it is. Yeah, maybe I'm just moaning though. Wary of that line between just complaining about stuff or, raising awareness of issues and what the difference is.
Yeah, well, it's complicated. I mean, there's the two sides, and like you said, like one side is that the internet has been such an incredible tool in allowing independent artists to be able to be seen, to be able to be in complete management of their own work, in how they market it and how they communicate directly with their audience. We've never been more connected in terms of being able to directly communicate with our audience. I mean, right now, as we record this, we're also on the first time on Instagram Live, right? So it's like there's an interaction there happening, which is kind of amazing and exciting. It's like, we get to sort of, and through TikTok as well, which I'm finding a really interesting experiment in terms of my music work. It's like you kind of getting a window into the world of someone, and like I think that it's actually kind of redefining the way that immersive art is being consumed. And it's like it's kind of a revolution in the way that art is being created, because it's now there's now other dimensions due to the technology that are opening up. I mean, my process is completely changing. I mean, I'm sharing my music production, for example, my process on TikTok now. Because I if you're interested, do come and check my TikTok out and have a look. But it's basically what I do day to day in the studio, and I'm sharing that. I've never even imagined sharing things like that publicly. So now I also think you've got some really good points in terms of the subscription model, and also I think one thing that is difficult for me and I'll be glad when we move on for this, is that, you know, we're all working for likes. And right, it's like that isn't really as much, and I am not putting down people who like engage with work and like it. Like, it is, you know, I mean, it is beautiful, it's wonderful. I mean, it's part of the gift of sharing, is having people feedback and it making a difference in their lives. Like, that is so meaningful and wonderful, and I'm so grateful for that. But I think then, you know, it's like working your whole life for likes. You know, I'm just thinking of beyond that. You know, how do we now move into a way where we can have, you know, we can be paying artists to be able to do their work. Because I think, like, the problem is, especially in music, is that because there isn't much money, hardly any money made in making records anymore. I mean, a lot of the bands that I've worked with basically don't write new material, a lot of them, you know, especially like musicians that are live session musicians, if you like. You know, they go out, they do sessions, they, you know, they play in a number of bands. And, you know, I mean, I used to do sound engineering for a while here in Bristol, and so I work with a lot of them. And, you know, they play the same set every time. You know, like they'd come back the next year and they play the same thing. And it's like, because they can't make any money out of making records, so they're not writing music, right? They're just performing it. And if they do try something new out, then they do it on stage. You know, they don't have any prep time, because, like, they don't get paid for rehearsals, right? It's like they only get paid for the gig. So it's like, how much recorded music isn't being made? Like, a lot that are like, and we're being robbed of that. That's being stolen from us. And that's because it costs money to go into a studio. I mean, I'm lucky that I've spent the last 20 years learning how to record, how to mix, how to use software, how to do all the whole process myself. And I'm devoted to it. It's like a religion to me to do it. So, you know, I love it. I'm obsessed with it. But I can see, if you're, you know, trying to strictly make a living from doing your music, you know, I work in other fields as well. You know, you're just not going to make money from it. I mean, you put a record out, and it's like, you know, you might break even from what you spent. And I'm talking about like fairly big artists that I know in the music industry, in the subculture of dance music. You know, I'm talking about people who get millions of streams on their Spotify, and that's something that we'll get to. Right?
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Because I think there's this whole mindset in society around, you know, you can't make money from art, and you need to get a real job. And, you know, this kind of archetype of the poor artist living in poverty, you know, barely being able to scrape by. And it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because, like, the more that image of the artist living in poverty is in the collective consciousness of, you know, of civilization, the more we think, oh, well, art isn't valuable, or that's just how it is, you know, there's no way to change that. It's just sort of accepted, and it's passed down to us from our parents telling us, you know, not to do an art degree because you will never make any money out of that. Why don't you go and do something like, I don't know, business? Trying to think of something that,
become
that adults
a lawyer,
do.
Study law,
or accounting, or I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
It starts there, doesn't it? Our parents discouraging us to pursue our art. It also happens with teachers. I've had art teachers when I was in secondary school who were very discouraging about pursuing it, and sort of knocked my confidence at an age when you're, you know, very vulnerable to that happening and you're full of doubt. So one person being sort of unsupportive or discouraging you at that age can have such a huge impact on the rest of your life, and shapes the path that you take. So yeah, it's difficult, because being an artist now, I mean, you can't really make a living from it. What are the options? Unless you're kind of independently wealthy, or you have parents who can support you, or maybe a partner who can support you. I mean, in this country, we have an arts council, and you can apply for a grant from that arts council, but it is a bit like buying a lottery ticket in the terms of the chances of being awarded that grant. And also, that can take years, multiple attempts of applying for funding. So yeah, it's like, where do you go from that? It's almost like you're just expected to do it for the love of it. And don't get me wrong, I do love it. I do love being creative. I love writing. I love supporting other artists through the work I'm doing, with the journal. But it's not really enough, is it? And it's kind of insulting to artists and writers to have this belief that they should just do it for free and just wake up every day and be motivated purely by their love of it, and not receive any other kind of validation other than likes on social media, like you were saying.
It's a big step, by the way, for us to be recording here in the day. There's like some massive vehicle outside, and I'm having to really tune into my body to really let that go. Get rid of my stickler. It's gone now.
So it's accepting that you can't control everything.
You can't control everything. I mean, yeah, like I think hearing you say that, you can make a living. You can be rich, right? Doing art, being an artist. People do it. Okay, you can make a lot of money out of it. So I'd just like to make that as a statement because, you mentioned the word belief, and I do think that it's like the world is like a reflection of our beliefs. So, you need to have strong beliefs in yourself and your worth, and this is really tapping into the self-development work that we all need to do on a daily basis because, it's like what we believe is manifest in the world. So,
but don't you think it's also a part of society's beliefs about artists and the fact that we allow these big companies such as Spotify to basically rob artists, and it's seen as just no big deal, it's just how it is?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I mean, like there's a couple of sides to it, I think, because like there's so much change going on with technology, and it's like the subscription model has been going for a couple of years, and it seems to be quite embedded in the way that people are approaching and consuming things. I mean, if you can like spend $10 a month or whatever it is, like streaming, and you just get endless films and TV and all that stuff, then that appeals, right? So so what's the solution here? I think, it's good to have a discussion about value. I think value is an important thing to talk about. And, there are things like Patreon, there's like Buy Me a Coffee, there are things around that are more geared towards the artist. Bandcamp is a platform that I really recommend you use, because you can, not, some people still, there's still like hundreds of millions spent on people buying music on Bandcamp a year, right? I forget the exact figure, but it is huge. So basically, the bigger record labels, they still sell millions of records, but the thing is that the problem is, and I know someone who lives around here actually, who works in distribution for one of the big major labels in classical music, and she was saying that they only focus on the biggest artists that they have. Basically, anyone who isn't the biggest name in that field of, in that genre of music, they don't do any work with, because it doesn't make any sense financially, because they're only really selling their biggest artists, right? So this is kind of the disbalance in music, right? It's like, the people at the top, and this is like it's got a name. There's a certain type of mathematical equation that things fall into, but it's like basically the 5% rule, and then the 95% are below that. So it's like that's a statistic that works across the board. So you've got the biggest artists, and they earn big money, and then everyone else is way beyond that, below that. So there's some issues with all of this, because we want diversity, we want like a representation of all cultures, all backgrounds, all all preferences of how we present ourselves in the world, and it's really unbalanced. So there's always these people out there though that will buy my music from Bandcamp, a small minority of people who really value things and will spend money on it, and they're amazing.
That's about belief, isn't it? Because those people who have that generosity of and set out to consciously support the arts and support independent artists and do what they can to sort of put their money, their hard-earned money, into helping the artists who need it. So that, I guess that goes back to belief, doesn't it? And really understanding the importance of giving that support. And I think a lot of artists, I can think of a few examples actually, really depend on that. They depend on those opportunities and generosity. I'm just thinking about Alexander McQueen. As a great documentary about him called McQueen, and basically he was claiming job seekers allowance while he was designing in the very early days of his fashion career, and he was spending that money that he was receiving on fabric so that he could make clothes, and relying on the generosity of the people around him, of his friends, to kind of support him because they believed in him. And another example just came into my head is David Lynch, who was able to make Eraserhead because the American Film Institute allowed him to take over the back stables that were on the property of their, it was like a campus kind of thing. And so he was able to spend 5 years just hanging out in those back stables and shooting all of Eraserhead on a very, very limited budget that I think he had a paper route, which is quite a funny thing to imagine. So yeah, it's like having to keep your eyes open for these opportunities and generous people who are going to support you. And that goes back to belief as well. It goes back to this whole abundance thing of seeking out that energy of opportunity and of hope and growth. And that comes in the form of people and sometimes organizations that can help you. So yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's kind of about mindset, but then it's also about the practicalities of day-to-day living, especially as living becomes more expensive, as it is doing, I think, in all parts of the world at the moment. It really affects the most vulnerable people in society, and artists are a kind of subsect of that vulnerable part of the population.
Yeah, you're right. Like, things take time to develop, and I think things get really interesting if you've got someone who dedicates their life to making things. And some of the most inspiring things that have ever been created by human beings have been because those people who have made them have spent their whole lives devoted to, just thinking of Beethoven as a big Beethoven person, and I'm listening to some of his music at the moment every day. That level of devotion, that level of like stick with itness and passion, it's like that really brings something transcendent to our lives, to everyone's lives, and really it is so meaningful to have these things. Like, you think if you remove these things, then human beings are, it's like it really is like such a deep reflection of who we really are. And the thing about this is that, like, from what I can understand with what I've experienced in my life, is like we're all put here for a reason, and everyone's reason for being here on this planet is to contribute, right? It's to contribute towards the uplifting of consciousness of the species, right? It's like our job here is to expand consciousness and to lift ourselves up, and also to help others be lifted up, right? And to be basically to create heaven on earth, right? And that sounds kind of cheesy, but it's definitely, from what I can feel, that feels correct to me. And certain people are put here as artists. It's like a lot of people who are put here as something, right? They're because of society conditioning them, and because of shame and all of these dynamics. It's like they never fulfill it, but there are a few that do, and they are the minority as well. Some of those are artists, and like, we have to support people, all people, in fulfilling the reason that they are alive, because if we do not do that, we are adding to the destruction of everything. It's like there is nothing more important than that. Nothing. And we must believe in each other. We must love ourselves and each other, and support each other, and be there, and believe in each other, right? I mean, it comes from ourselves. You can't believe in someone else, you don't believe in yourself, right? So it's like we need to spread this outwardly, and to realize that we can have a planet which is full of love, creativity, connectedness, empathy, amazing things. And art is one very important piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, I think it's about knowing our worth as well, having high self-worth, which I think is something that a lot of us struggle with, because if you know that what you're doing is worth a lot in terms of helping humanity, which is what art does, then it becomes easier to have that openness to, receiving money, but then also receiving other things, like we were saying, opportunities and different forms of energy kind of coming towards us. Because I think there's also this shame around asking for money, or not thinking that your art, or even, whatever it is, like the business that you're running, whatever you're sort of selling, this, not believing that it's worthy. And I know that you obviously do like coaching services, and that's another aspect of it, like knowing your worth in that kind of situation where you're using your skills to help other people to grow, and really understanding the importance of that and the huge worth of that. So yeah, I think there's also removing this shame around asking for money is an important thing as well. I remember I saw something on Twitter recently, which, Twitter is obviously just a horrible place, and I try to avoid spending too much time on there. I only go on it to promote things, which I think is the boat that a lot of people are in now, with sort of having to use a platform that is so sort of toxic and full of shame. And there's this kind of influencer that I follow on there called the Holistic Psychologist, and she posts a lot of stuff about growth and self-love, and doing the work on yourself that's gonna help you break those dysfunctional patterns, that kind of thing. So I love what she posts. I love the way she words things. And I just saw recently on there there's just this backlash against her, against some of the stuff that she was posting, and people getting into sort of nasty arguments, and really sort of trying to tear her down. And I saw one person had commented on one of her tweets, oh, she's just posting all this stuff so that she can get people to buy her book. And it was like this sort of like shaming her for sharing free information so that people might, click on her profile and click on the link to go and buy her book and buy it, as if that's like a bad thing, as if she should be ashamed of promoting herself in any way, or, asking for money for a book that she's put years of her life into. It's just, I thought that really captured this whole shame thing around money and asking for money and promoting yourself. That's another one of those very toxic attitudes about artists and writers and people just putting themselves out there, which is a very vulnerable thing to do. And I can understand why it's scary. I find it scary putting myself out there.
Of course, yeah, and on some level, that person who made that comment rather, shaming her, that person understands that as well on some level, and I think it's probably jealous of someone being in a position to be heard, because we all want to be heard, we all want to have power, we all want to be heard, and I think when we feel powerless and we feel unheard, that can bring out the
Mm.
dark in us. But essentially, you know, it is contributing towards the light as well, you know, because it's like we need both of those things, you know, for growth and development. And in a way, if you're getting those type of comments, you know, it's a sign that you're doing the right things, because it means that, like, you know, the energy that you're drawing into what you're doing is working. And I did read Curtis Jackson's book recently, 50 Cent, and he did say that, you know, he basically, his position on it is that, like, you know, either you love his work or you hate it. Either you love it or you hate it, basically, because to him they're both just as valuable. You know, because he can use the hate for his work in exactly the same way that he can use the love for his work, because if people really hate it, they're going to go away and talk about it, right? So it's like it's marketing for him. And I thought that was quite a interesting and clever position to take on people approaching his brand. And you know, he actively pushes people to hate it. Which is quite liberating, because I think, like, you know, when this person that you're talking about in the position that she's in, it's like you get a choice, right? You get all this hate, you get a choice. You either allow that hate to shut you down, or you take that energy, because it is just energy, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, we say good energy, bad energy, but it's not. Energy is just energy. So you get a decision of what you're going to do with that, and you can use that to help what you are doing. But it is tragic when people get shut down by it, and because it's killing. It's like killing a little beautiful little bird, you know. It's equivalent.
Yeah, it's very easy to take it personally as well, I think. I think especially if you're a woman, putting yourself out there on the internet, because it's, you know, the bigger your audience gets, the more you're going to get, you know, the really horrible misogynistic comments, and obviously this is even worse for, you know, women of colour. So yeah, it's just about building like a really thick skin, isn't it, and not learning not to take that stuff personally. But it can be very scary when it's threatening in nature. Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Yeah, and that's why most people don't do it.
Yeah, and it's understandable why they don't.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. Like, you know, we are designed to survive, and you know, we tend to be more of a default of trying to stay comfortable in life, and obviously that is really detrimental, actually. You know, it's like the uncomfortable position is the stronger one, and you know, it's like that saying, if you do what is easy, life is hard. If you do what's hard, life is easy. And you know, like, doing this work, doing your art brand, doing your music, whatever it is essentially your growth, right? I mean, like, that's something that I'm understanding is like, you know, my self-development and my music are the same. Like, that, you know, and in fact, like, there is nothing apart from self-development, right, or the opposite of that in the world done by human beings. It's like you're either doing something and it's helping you, or you're doing something and it's killing you. Really, there's only those two things at work ever in all of existence of our experience. So you know, art is a spiritual journey. That's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a spiritual enlightenment. It's growth, it's development, it's experience. It's uncomfortable, it hurts, it's painful, you feel vulnerable, right? That's the experience of it. And you know, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, and it's a gift, and a privilege to be able to be in a position to experience that.